I'm just getting the recording started. Hello and welcome to our virtual teacher externship hosted by Elevate Ed AZ and the Center for the Future of Arizona. Today's session is hosted by Vanguard, and we have Renee Brown leading the way. So Renee, I will hand things over to you to introduce your panelists.
Great, thank you so much. Well, we really appreciate your time today, and hopefully we can provide you some good information for your students and for the future. So I wanted to start by kind of introducing the team. So I think we're still waiting for Jessica Vittori, but she'll be here shortly. My name is Renee Brown. I've been with Vanguard 21 years. I've been in the HR field for much longer than that. So my main job is external recruiting for Vanguard in our Scottsdale location. So I'll kick it over to Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Scher. I've worked for Vanguard for 12 years. Renee recruited me. So my role today is a media and analytics project manager for global talent acquisition. So I run our career site, the job application portal, all media and advertising that goes into attracting candidates to look at our open jobs.
Thank you. Kristen, you want to go next?
Sure. This is Chris Carr, and I've been with Vanguard 22 years, same as Renee. So over half of my career at Vanguard, I was in leadership and over half in human resources. I currently work with our internal crew to find jobs. So I'm an internal recruiter, but Vanguard's very big on career development and having a robust career within the organization. So we help facilitate that and help hiring leaders find the right talent for their jobs.
Thank you. And I see Jessica's Vittori's here. So Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Jessica Vittori. I'm also a member of our internal talent advisor team with Chris Carr. I have been at Vanguard 9 years and spent my entire time here in human resources and have a passion for talent development. So happy to be here today.
Great. Thank you, ladies. All right. So we were provided with some topics that we can cover, but would love to have you ask any questions that you might have about the recruiting process, skills needed now, in the future, anything else you'd like to know about. But let's start with the first question maybe for the panel. How has applying for jobs changed in the last 10 years, and how is Vanguard coping with this new virtual environment? Stephanie, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so I'll share that I'm going to go a little further than 10 years. So when I graduated from college, the biggest decision about applying for a job was what color linen paper to print your resume on, and we would debate whether we should fold it into an A9 envelope or use a manila envelope so it didn't need to be folded. Today, that's very different. Every job application is completed online. That's our system of record. Our applicant tracking systems are all virtual and linked into some form of our corporate website and a jobs page. So, and then I would say the research entailed in job search has dramatically changed with the internet and social media. Those play a really big part in how candidates get information about who we are, both publicly produced information from a corporate perspective, but also the voices of our employees. So you don't have to actually know someone to understand what someone's experience is as an employee with Vanguard. You can search the internet, search social media platforms, use hashtags, use LinkedIn, network online. So it has really changed how you go about gathering that information to either decide to apply or throughout your interview process to educate yourself.
Yeah, I know way back when it was you'd throw an ad in the paper, right? The newspaper. Nobody gets newspapers anymore. Everything's online, and you'd send in your resume, or you'd go and knock on their door and hand them a resume. So it's changed a lot in the last 20 years or plus. So Jessica, Chris, do you have anything to add?
I think the one thing, and I used to recruit on college campuses in a prior role. And while they do apply online, I think any contact you can make with the company ahead of time or just through, connections, your network, just because you can imagine the slew of applicants we get. Renee can talk about the number we get. So anything that, you still have to do some networking, you still have to do some research, you still need to somehow make contact with that company.
Mhm.
I agree. Although it's virtual, especially now more than ever, the relationship management networking piece is still very critical. So leveraging your network is very helpful.
Yep, definitely. So there's so many ways to do that too, especially the big one is LinkedIn. That's our kind of main platform that we use to just reach out to people that work at that company, ask them what it's like, to start kind of building that network. There may be a friend or a neighbor that has a friend that works at Vanguard or whatever. So kind of connecting with those people is really good to get started and get that referral into the company, because we do really appreciate what we call crew referrals or employee referrals. So they are really looked at more often than the slew of other resumes that we get. But yeah, it's definitely important to network. So good. All
Renee,
right.
To underscore your LinkedIn comment, 94% of recruiters are using LinkedIn to fill their jobs or at least post openings in addition to other places. And pre-pandemic, over 15 million jobs were posted on LinkedIn. So it is the preeminent place to involve in your job search.
Good. Awesome. So when talking to your hiring managers, what skill sets do you feel are the most important that they're looking for? Anybody want to kick that off?
I'll start. I support mainly our retail division. So a lot of our frontline client customer support associate. So kind of your obvious strong communication, organizational skills, but really that focus on our client. And that's one of the things that I personally love about Vanguard is alignment to the mission. So really looking for that, not only above and beyond what's best for the client, but also how can you make a broader impact from like an organizational standpoint when you're looking at broader organizational initiatives. So that's one thing that I encourage hiring leaders when they're looking is who's kind of not only doing their day job internal, but who's taking it a step further and making a broader impact on the team is one of the things that we really look for.
And I'll add to many of my hiring managers are looking for those individuals that, as Jessica said, not can communicate well, relationship management, and also ability to deal with ambiguity and be fluid and flexible and adjust. Not every job is going to come with a set, this is what you're going to do every day. You've got to be able to navigate that. So that is one thing hiring managers often want is that flexibility and that ability to deal with ambiguity. And definitely the relationship management piece of it is critical.
I think a couple other things that I'm thinking of is problem solving, right? So you're constantly having these things thrown at you and you've got to pivot and be able to figure it out. So I think problem solving is huge. Teamwork, right? Being able to work with other people and, different people, right? Diverse people. So we want to make sure that people are able to do that in our teams. So, someone that just doesn't like talking to others or doesn't like working with others and likes to take on the job and not share, the responsibility, it just doesn't work. So. All right, thank you. All right, so as far as the basic skills, what basic skills do you feel like can be influenced in the schools, even at the early education level?
I think a lot of times, Renee, when you think about you shared teamwork, right? That can be fostered very easily. Well, not easily, right? It depends on who you're working with. But that can be fostered within early childhood, all the way, honestly, up through college, those group projects, right? How do you interact in that space and allow others the opportunity to succeed or kind of uncover what might be their own challenge or opportunity areas? So I think that's a huge one. Communication, right? I also think about critical thinking, conceptual thinking, like how do you uncover that thought process and the why behind that, I think is also helpful to cultivate that from the start whenever we can. And not, people make mistakes, right? Also resilience, the opportunity to fail, right? We're not always going to be a stellar student at our job. We're all going to have those days. So how do you also bounce back from some of those difficult times?
And to tag on to that, most of us here have been people leaders. I think the differentiator for me is someone's ability to take feedback and to build from it. So we all have opportunity areas. We all have reactions to the work and how we handle different things. But to be able to hear when people provide you feedback, whether it is obvious or a little bit veiled, and also not to have that freeze the individual and or to have them just stuck on that that place that they may have tripped or didn't do as well as maybe they could have, but to take the feedback and be able to build forth from it.
And I think that's critical. In elementary school, it's really hard, right? So they take everything so seriously that it's really difficult for them to kind of come out of that if they do something wrong. So again, it's something that they'll build up, as they get mature. But it is something that's really critical in the business world. So. Right. So what sources can you suggest in helping students really explore potential career opportunities?
I would say first and foremost, their personal network and then the network of others that are willing to share, to encourage them that is the best way to understand what do people do, what do they enjoy most about what they do, what's hard. And so we talk about relationships a lot, to leverage the relationships they have to be able to ask questions that maybe in a first interview or an informational interview with a company they're interested in, they may be a little afraid to ask. But if it's a friend's parent that happens to be a lawyer or a customer service manager, where they can say, I'm curious what you do every day and what's the hard part and what do you really enjoy? What makes you jump out of bed every day to go to work? To be able to have those open conversations can really help to give them that knowledge to form their own opinions and to explore further. I don't think there's any comparison for that. If you don't have access to some of that type of networking, even LinkedIn. I have college age, I have two sons and one is at U of A, and we've even used his LinkedIn account to look for others that have graduated from his specific major that are working at companies that he admires or he, really enjoys the products or services. And he's reached out to engineers to say, I'm curious how you got to where you are today. And they have agreed to do a video conference with him, 30 minutes. And, it helps to have that connection that they're both Wildcats or whatever that connection may be. But it's very empowering for the kids to know that people would take the time and they feel important to have that conversation.
And I'll share another one that I also love. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was really around when I was looking for roles. So I typically would go straight to the source, the company website, the mission, the values. But now there's sites like Glassdoor, I believe, Steph, you shared the other day, Fairy Godboss. So these are sites where past, current, existing, all sorts of employees can go ahead and submit reviews. So obviously taking everything with a grain of salt, but there can be a great opportunity there to get some great perspectives on what the culture and other things might look like at that organization, a day in the life.
As they work into college too, they have a lot of college career fairs too, but at the elementary school level and even the high school level, career days, right? Or having speakers come into your classroom to tell them what it's like to do that particular job or that particular industry, what it's like. I think those are helpful for the students to kind of start thinking, well, maybe that's something I want to look at. Another thing I just want to emphasize is making sure that they understand a career path is great, but you may veer off of that career path, right? You may be, graduating from college with an English degree and you end up at Vanguard. So you never know where life takes you. So we want to make sure that they understand that, your career path is great. And if that's really your passion, yeah, go for it and keep going for it. But if there's something that comes up that's kind of interesting to you, think about it and maybe take a little bit of a detour and see if that's of interest to you, because you never know, that career path may be totally different from what you originally thought.
And even though you may earn a degree in management or chemistry, there are ways to work in those areas or use the skills that you learned and developed in those degree programs that may not on the surface make sense or connect for everybody. My favorite is at college career fairs, a student will walk up and they'll say, what kind of jobs do you have? And they'll say, I'm a management major, so I want to be a manager. You really have to figure out what type of industry sort of lights your fire or you're interested in inherently to continue to develop acumen. So being a manager is one thing, but finding that industry and the calling and the space is also important. So we have to, account for having them keep an open mind. Just because you get a medical doctor degree, you may wind up being a technical writer with the expertise as an oncologist, and you don't see patients. So there are lots of ways to connect the dots for the degree and the passion they have for science or STEM topics or interacting with people, helping people. That happens in every degree program.
All right. Are there any specific technical skills or certifications that are needed in the financial services industry?
I can tell you that more and more I am seeing internally the need for data analysts. So anyone that's got any interest in that field, I would encourage them to pursue that. We are clamoring for those types of roles and they come at a high salary. So that data analytics, the ability to make that data tell a story is what hiring managers are looking at. So data quality, data analysts, data scientists. I've heard some terms thrown out there. I couldn't tell you exactly what they are, but Calibra Ranger, AWS, anything cloud-based. I mean, it is a growing field, and I know every department that I work with are looking for that because they've got their own sets of data and they need someone to, make it tell a story. What do we do with this data now? Is our data accurate? Is our data telling us what we need it to tell us? So I think that's one area I can think of as far as, and you would be, I think any industry probably that's true.
Mm-hmm.
At the basic level, that is Excel, Tableau, and what I think about that most of my internal clients and my media partners, the way we speak about it when we analyze data is data visualization. How do you take the numbers and show a chart or extract an infographic that will be meaningful to the business leader so that they can make decisions based on the data? It's not about looking at 1,000-row spreadsheet. It's how do you condense that down to something that's actionable for the business to make decisions. So I agree, Chris, that is the number one, as well as user experience or client experience. people that design what happens when you shop or use a company's application to interact with them, or their digital experience. That has come to the forefront for us and many others too.
And I'll share as you progress, especially at least on the financial track. I support our retail division and a lot of our trading technical roles. So when you are looking to grow in that space, not only financial license, which Vanguard does support your Series 763, but once you move into potentially advanced designations, something perhaps like a CFP, a certified financial planner, a CFA, certified financial analyst. So those are kind of all long-term, also potential designations one could potentially.
Very good. Awesome. Thank you. So how important is a degree in the financial services industry? Is it something required or something that's just preferred? And I'll take that since I do a lot of that external hiring. So for my roles, and most of them are customer service roles and processing roles and things like that. So we hired hundreds of people each year into those roles in Arizona. So I'd say it's not required, but it's preferred. And the reason it's preferred is we want to see some track record of being able to take tests. Because like Jessica was saying, we have some licensing requirements for most of our positions that work with clients. So we want to make sure that they're able to, learn material, take exams, they're not panicked when they take an exam because they are required for them to have those in this industry. Now, there's a lot of positions that don't require it, so that's not saying that they wouldn't be considered at all at Vanguard, but at some positions they are required to get these licenses. So we prefer at least a 2-year degree. 4-year degree is better, but we do hire, externally with no degree or at least an associate's degree.
And I can speak to internally. Most hiring managers that I work with they want the degree, the bachelor's degree, and many, as you go advance in the organization, want the upper graduate degree too, MBA. So are working towards that. So I think once you're here and you've started working and your career progresses, that is an expectation that you at least have the bachelor's and sometime a master's.
Yep, exactly. And I think one thing for the students to just kind of take a look at too is what is the tuition reimbursement process for the company they're looking at. We have a very generous program at Vanguard. We actually pay up to $9,000 a year towards your degree, whether it's a associate's, bachelor's, or master's. So it's a great opportunity for you to, do that on a part-time basis, right? It might take you a little longer, but do that online or on a part-time basis so that you can still work. But we do help you as far as the tuition and the books for your classes. So again, that's something that the students might want to look at is to make sure they ask that if they want to continue their education. All right. So how can a student apply their experience with school or maybe a part-time job to jobs at Vanguard?
I typically say when looking to apply for a new opportunity, obviously we've already echoed doing your homework, so optimistically you have a good idea of what they're looking for. So I usually recommend highlighting 2 to 3 skills or competencies with what they're looking for. So perhaps if you had an experience as a lifeguard, how could you make that transferable to a business experience? So thinking creatively how that student or person in that situation was able to influence the outcome or really prioritize things happening in that space, because skills like that are transferable to business environments, right? So how do you not only attention to detail, right? Prioritization, things like that, I think are really important to highlight in some of that experience and sharing how it would help you be successful in the new opportunity.
I'm sure Renee can agree with this, but I think anytime we look at resumes and for entry level positions, any work history to us shows us that, this person is on top of it. They've got, they were able to get themselves through school, maintain a part-time job, and, a certain GPA. It shows the discipline and the commitment. And I think that, so any job, right, can lead to at least the recruiter taking a look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of jobs just really just get basic customer service jobs, right? So we're looking for someone here at Vanguard really that likes working with people, right? Likes working with customers, is able to communicate well, can problem solve, and understand, when a customer gets mad that their steak isn't done right or whatever. So having those skill sets are really important. So, part-time jobs are great. When they get into college, have they, joined some fraternity or sorority? Are they a leader in some of those organizations? Those are things that just really stand out, right? So the high GPAs, if they're involved in school and they could still juggle all that, that's really important. So again, just encourage them to kind of get some experience, even if it's volunteer experience, right? With no pay for it. It's just they volunteer at the Red Cross or do something else. It shows that they're interested in the community, want to help people, those type of things. So those are really extra things that they can do to really kind of perk up their resume so that we'll take a look at it.
I agree, Renee, and they can be creative. I remember volunteering at the Humane Society because that's just something I was personally passionate about. And there's still ways that I'm working with people and other ways that I'm building a business kind of portfolio of skills. So encouraging them to be creative and that's great. You're passionate about that. How would that help you succeed in the future? And there are very many ways that you can connect the dots. So I love that you said that.
All right. So, ladies, what is the culture like at Vanguard? Can you give us some ideas on what it's like there?
Well, I'll go. I think this is one of the things I always say to people. I would not have encouraged my son and my daughter-in-law to work at Vanguard if I didn't feel strongly about the culture at Vanguard. And I think one of the what we pride ourselves on is that opportunity to develop internally. The fact that you are encouraged to pursue jobs and encouraged to do so and supported to do so. So your career path can be cross division, lateral moves, promotions, even demotions if it fits your needs. That's encouraged and supported at Vanguard. So you could really have a robust, long career here and still I've been here 22 years and I've had over 13 jobs. So I think that encouragement is so critical to who we are, that we develop our own talent and encourage people to move around.
I would also say another thing that I'm really passionate about that keeps me here every day is everyone that I work with. Chris and I are on the same team, Steph, Renee, we all work very closely. So I know I've shared before and it sounds a little cheesy, but we really do become like a family here and get to know each other inside, outside of work, very supportive, inclusive. Let's talk about differences. Let's talk about challenges in a very positive, healthy way. So that's one thing that keeps me here. And I started as a contractor. So honestly, I didn't really know much, thought it might be a good opportunity, worked really hard, and I've been hooked. So it's one of those things where you really become ingrained in the mission, the organization, like really doing best for the client. And I think people find that their own way. I had to have a few different jobs that make you really value certain things over others. But I would say also in the spirit of development, just the investment that Vanguard puts in its employees. So the benefits, that's one thing I know I personally was not really looking for right out of college. So trying to have that long-term perspective and where you're really going to be happy.
Yeah, and I would add the people, the quality of people that I get to work with, the leader quality, and the opportunity to develop. So I joined the organization in a recruiting function I transitioned to lead a team of trainers for a number of years and then went back to the talent acquisition and recruiting space, but needed additional training. And I went to a post-baccalaureate program at Georgetown to develop the social media management skills that were required that we saw emerging 6 years ago. I would have never thought that I have a marketing degree. I wound up in HR, and then Vanguard continued to develop me. And then also getting to work with these people that are my friends, that are my family. Over 12 years, Chris and I were peers at one point in leadership, people leadership roles, and now we sit laterally as peers in individual contributor roles. It's just so interesting to watch. And I think it's been interesting and challenging to us in a positive way, even through this transition during the pandemic. We all sit probably within 100 feet of each other in our office. And so it's really jarring not to see these people every day. But yet when we do on video conference, it's like, oh, my friends are there. And we get to do things together. So it does underscore how much we value each other and work with each other to amplify our strengths.
Yeah, and I have to say culture is probably and the values of company is something that the students really need to pay attention to. You want to make sure that you fit with those values and that culture and that organization. It's really rough when you get into a company and it's just not it doesn't fit what your expectations were, and it's people just kind of keep going and going and going, and it's like you dread getting up in the morning, that type of thing. So you want to feel comfortable with the people you work with. You want to have good opportunities, all those type of things. So that's why it's so important to do your research before you just jump at the first job that offers you a job. So we just want to make sure that you're looking at that company and the culture that permeates the company, because you want to make sure that it's a good fit. All right, great. So how would someone learn more about working in the financial service field if they really don't have any experience in that industry? And is previous experience required? I think we covered a little bit about this, but anybody have any additional question or thoughts on that?
I would say any of the technical resources, if that's something someone's truly interested in. How are you staying aware of industry knowledge? So are they reading things such as Ignites, Wall Street Journal, additional resources that they can garner additional experience and staying current? As we know, the markets are constantly changing. So just having that drive and thirst for knowledge to uncover a lot of those things. And I know we all have the internet at our fingertips. There's a lot of information on there, but Ignites and the Wall Street Journal, those are some of the ones that immediately come to mind from a financial standpoint. Bloomberg as well as another large one, obviously.
And social media is an important tool today, and that's in my area of work. Things like LinkedIn, you can follow companies that you have interest in, follow CEOs or influential individuals that are public figures, so that you can keep up with the news. It's actually delivered into your news feed, and you can decide if you want to read the article. And social media has a couple of tricks that I would share with you all in terms of being able to find specific company information. So if you're interested in Vanguard, an industry-wide accepted practice is your career-related social media accounts are typically named something like Life at Vanguard, Life at Dell, Life at Amazon. And so that's a way you can find on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, the accounts that are going to showcase company culture, benefits, and jobs. The other thing would be to use hashtag tools in any of those platforms, so that you can see what not just the company is putting out on their handle, but also what employees might be saying about something they're involved in, and they'll hashtag it Life at Vanguard.
Thank you, Stephanie. And that brings up a big point that I want to make in social media and your persona on social media and how important that is, and how students sometimes they're posting things that maybe employers are looking at and thinking, maybe I don't want to employ this person. So Stephanie is our expert on that. So I'd love to get your thoughts, Stephanie, on how important it is to really be careful on what you're posting on social media.
Yeah, the first tip I would say is everyone here, and you should promote it with your students from probably middle school on, is Google yourself. See what comes up in the organic results when you put your full name and your city to determine if that is the personal brand you are intending to portray. The other thing is privacy settings are an important part of social media. So I'm not here to say you shouldn't post pictures of your family or when you're out with a group or at a party. You absolutely should be able to share that on your social media accounts. They are personal accounts, as compared to LinkedIn would be a professional social media platform. But pay attention to your privacy settings. Encourage your students to pay attention to their privacy settings so that only individuals that they accept an invitation from may see their content. And that also will protect their personal pictures and intellectual property as well. So social media is an important tool in communicating both personally and professionally. And LinkedIn is the key professional platform. That would be the one account where I would say from a privacy perspective, you do want recruiters to be able to see that. You do want people to be able to find you there, but you're also not posting pictures of you at a party or at a picnic on LinkedIn. So it's all relative to the audience, and you have the opportunity to restrict that audience to ensure your personal brand is maintained.
I think the only thing that as a caveat, though, Stephanie, you can probably agree, is once you put a picture out there, it goes everywhere. So
yes,
even if you later on try to pull it down or whatever, it could still be out there. So again, it's just be very careful on what you post on social media.
Yes, and for most organizations, they take a standard approach to reviewing candidate social media. So for example, Vanguard looks at LinkedIn profiles because it is a representation of their professional persona. We do not look at Facebook or Instagram to see what an applicant is doing, but it can tarnish their personal brand if coworkers see it or someone that in the future might consider them for an internal transition or promotion. If it somehow comes up unintentionally, like we can't unsee some of these things. So, and that's why you just have to be careful about what you're putting and consider the impact it could have down the line.
Very good. Awesome. Well, I wanted to open up and see what kind of questions that you might have for us. So feel free to unmute and ask any questions that you might have.
Hi. So
Hi.
I have an embarrassing question, I guess. I'm not familiar with your organization, Vanguard.
Okay.
Could you just kind of describe that to me, what Vanguard is?
Oh, certainly. So Vanguard is actually a large financial firm. We are famous for our mutual funds and other investment opportunities. We've been in business since 1975. We have over $5 trillion in assets, so we are a pretty large firm. We're kind of word of mouth, so that's probably why maybe, David, you haven't heard from us because we don't do a lot of advertising.
Well, I
but
was Google searching you while you were talking, and
okay.
there's a bunch of different Vanguards.
Yeah, there is.
There's a university, a trucking company, and none of those seem to fit with what I'm hearing from you. So I just wanted to know. All right.
I apologize. I probably should have said something at the beginning, but yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And no
of course.
embarrassing questions. Candidly, I was not aware of Vanguard when I started and when I interviewed. So that's one of those things that you never know what you're going to find.
Yep, exactly. Any other questions?
I just had a question about the LinkedIn. I love the idea of Googling yourself and then making sure that the students are aware of what their reputation really is, and then teaching them how to set privacy, because they do it for certain things, but not for everything that's important. But I think LinkedIn, I believe you have to be 18. Do you know if that's still, I know originally you had to be at least 18 because a couple years ago, I had tried to get my students set up, a LinkedIn, a professional account. Some of them had some interesting emails like big booty hose. And I'm like, oh my God, you can't use that for business. And, we're going through all these things. And so I'm like, well, let's set you up with a better one with Google. So they did that. And then I'm like, well, now let's set us up with LinkedIn. And only like one kid could do it because they were 18.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if they're still requiring that?
I'm not sure. I can take a look at that. It would be in their terms and conditions, but it's probably also true for the other social accounts. But as we all know, our kids are really tech savvy and they figure out ways around it. So it's an interesting question. And I think at 18, they probably have relevant experience. Some kids work all the way through high school and it could add value, but I don't know the answer to that in terms of under 18.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just a couple of quick questions in regards to what you offer at Vanguard. David, you are not familiar with Vanguard, but they have some of the best products on the planet. And I'm saying that from a personal perspective. I'm amazed that every teacher doesn't have an account at Vanguard. I've had one for probably 30 years. And it's amazing. Once you realize what they have and what they offer, and anyone in a financial background, a lot of people are trying to sell you a product, but what they offer lets you really become engaged in the financial area. And they walk you through everything. They got some of the lowest fees in the industry. So I'm not trying to sell for them, but the reality is that every teacher should have an account at Vanguard. I'll say that. Next for me is, as far as internships, do you offer internships to high school students? And if not, are you planning to do that in the future? And what do you see actually working for Vanguard in terms of doing interviews now and having to do them from a virtual standpoint versus in person, and how that's affecting your decision making?
Yeah, so no, unfortunately, we don't offer internships for high school. Our internships are kind of limited, but they're summer internships, and it's for juniors in college. So because you really have to have some of that, professional experience and stuff like that to start working in the mutual fund industry, we wait a little bit longer before we bring people in as far as interns. But yeah, so it'd be the juniors in college is what we usually target.
One thing I'll just add related to the internships that we shared with the group yesterday, we get a lot of questions about this every year, and it's heartbreaking, is students should be looking for internships regardless of the industry or company the fall before the summer that they want to intern, if it's a summer program, because those they're posted to our career sites just like a regular job, and you go through the full application and interview process. But we fill those typically by December of the winter before the actual intern dates. So a lot of times I know Renee and I have gotten referrals and things from friends and networks, and they'll say to us in April, like, oh, a son of a friend is looking for a job and they're really interested in Vanguard. And we're like, ugh, those were filled 4 or 5 months ago. So waiting to the semester before the summer is not effective to have your first choice.
And Ken, what was your second question? You were talking about virtual. So I know everything's gone virtual these days. Oops, you're on mute, looks like.
Correct. In terms of you having to interview individuals now virtually versus in person to fill your positions, how's that affecting your decision making? And do you feel like it's not giving you the full picture versus what you would have interviewing? And I'll give you a perfect example. I interviewed at Vanguard back in '99, this summer, and I was offered a position the same day I accepted a position in education. So obviously trajectories are kind of different. And I noticed, Renee, from your background on LinkedIn, that's when you started. So it must have been around the same month or two. But to bring that forward, when I was interviewing at that time, I was in the lobby And one of the other individuals is going to interview received a phone call, and they were just going off on the phone about something negative that was happening. And the lady went into the interview, and the secretary that was out front said, she didn't realize, but that was part of her interview too, because they asked us kind of how they were when they were sitting out in the lobby. So it was kind of at that point, I knew it myself, but it's amazing how many people don't really realize that, once you step into that establishment and you start your interview process, it starts with the receptionist and works its way forward. And that's what I meant by doing it online now. Little things like that you probably can't pick up like you would in an in-person interview, or how they conduct themselves while they're sitting in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we had to pivot right in March to virtual interviews. So we do them on Microsoft Teams. But we do phone interviews first with the recruiter. So that's just over the phone. So that really didn't get too much as far as affected. But then, of course, the hiring managers, they would like to see, face to face, their person. So we did video, and it's working actually pretty well. I think it saved us a lot of money, not paying for travel for people that are flying in from somewhere else. So we save some money there, which is a positive. I think the negative for candidates on a candidate's side is they don't get to see the campus, right? See our site, get to kind of interact with people, that type of thing. So that's a huge part of our kind of our interview process, is for them to see the culture and see the other people in person. So that's been a little bit of a negative, but we've had some great success over the summer. We did not slow down at all. We're still hiring hundreds of people, and it's all virtual, and they're coming in virtual. They're doing everything from their first day orientation to their training virtually right now. So and it's working. I mean, we prefer in person, but it is working, and we haven't slowed down at all. So thank you for asking, Ken.
Yeah, and Ken,
Just
I would
another
say,
question. How many interviews do you conduct per individual? When I did it, there was many of them, and then of course multiple individuals in the process for the interview, which I would presume is probably even more extensive now.
Yeah. So it just depends on the level of the position, right? And so if it's a really high level position, yes, you're going to meet with probably, 5, 6, 7 people, maybe even. So it's still in that case. But at the entry level, they basically have one and done. So they do one interview and we make a decision. So it's pretty quick for entry level. For anything higher, we take it very seriously, especially for leaders here. So we want to make sure that everyone has a consensus that this person has the same values that we really look for in a leader. So Stephanie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, Ken, I think it is important to, we're absent of the opportunity for candidates to go on campus and see the environment. We have a beautiful campus. And I think the thing that I look for when I've interviewed for organization is how the people in that situation on site treat each other and how they interact. That's really important to me as I'm considering a company culture. But you would be surprised, we are able to replace from a recruiting side the evaluation of candidates, because in the virtual environment, there are different challenges and different situations that arise. And so when there are technology challenges or scheduling snafus and whatnot, there are a number of people along the interview process that observe how the candidate reacts and handles the situation. And I think that is probably the closest thing we have to the interaction with our security staff, our the welcome folks that welcome them into the campus and help them get to the right room, et cetera. So in the absence of that in person, we use some of the virtual situations to get some insights into how they handle themselves.
All right. We might have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
You talked about tuition reimbursement, which is, I think, huge for a lot of our students. And just not having the opportunity to be able to pay for the college financially. Then you talked about entry-level jobs requiring possibly 2 years, 4 years. Obviously, those are certifications. You're going to need their 6, 7, 63, all of that. Do you have other entry-level jobs like data entry or they're kind of two paths? How does the data, kind of the entry level work?
Yeah. So processing associates don't require any kind of licenses. So they're a little more lenient as far as the college degrees, et cetera. So um, definitely is opportunities. We also do a lot, and this might be an option too for some students just to get some experience, is go to a temp agency, because we actually have a temp agency that helps us with our hiring for our what we call tax season. So it gets crazy here during tax season. So from December to April 15th, or this year, July 15th, right? So it gets pretty crazy. So we actually hire hundreds of people, even in the Scottsdale location, as contractors or temporaries. So we go through an agency. Ronstadt is our agency, but they can get that experience by doing that. So maybe that's an option too, right? I think a lot of companies are going to contract work right now just because of the pandemic and stuff. So you might want to have them kind of look at maybe a contract job in an industry or an organization that they're interested in, because that's one of the ways we hire too, is if these contractors are doing a really good job, we can put them on full time. So that's an option too for students.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure there were a couple of different tracks there, because you're going to have some kids coming out with no experience, maybe customer service from their summer jobs, high school jobs, but then needing to work.
Yep.
To offer part-time, or is it most of it full-time?
It's pretty much full-time. Yeah, we do all full-time. Yeah.
Okay,
so, thank you, Heidi. Any last questions?
I just hope they change their mind as far as high school.
Yeah, I know. I'd love to be able to do some kind of externships or something, shadowing, those type of things with high school.
That's what I say,
I
a
think
job
it's really
shadow,
critical.
a job
Yeah.
shadow or something like that.
Yeah, I think we are a little conservative on that approach just because of the sensitivity, I guess, with account information. So it would be very limited on what we can show them or have them do. So I think that's one of the things that kind of holds us back in the high school level.
Your risk management's never going to go for that.
No, probably not. And if you're a client, you probably appreciate that.
Ken might be rethinking now. He's like, oh.
No, well, obviously teaching cybersecurity, and you mentioned LinkedIn. From an actual cyber, we were in a conference actually last week, and that was brought up. And I don't think a lot of people understand the vulnerabilities with a lot of the sites. And, like you said, it lives out there. It truly is. Anything that you put up is going to be there. We see it now. 25 years ago, people were doing things and no one ever dreamed they would have it today. So I think students are becoming much more aware of that. I think it's more the adults that don't have the same awareness as far as privacy, but I think students have really changed in the last couple of years, at least from my perspective that I see. But that's good. But yes, you're right. From a financial standpoint, that does make it complicated for sure.
Yeah. All right.
But I do mean it when I said you guys have an amazing product.
Thank you.
It's been fantastic for me, so I can't imagine what it's done for others.
Yeah, it's an awesome product. So definitely check into it, everyone. Thanks, Ken.
Well, if there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up this externship meeting. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Renee, Stephanie, Kristen, Jessica. We really appreciate all of your information about Vanguard, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take
We
care,
really
guys.
appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.